Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're diving deep into The Art of Strategy, a game theorist's guide to success in business and life by Avinash K. Dixit and Barry J. Nalebuff.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, this book is all about using game theory to make better decisions.
I think a lot of people are intimidated by the idea of game theory. Like, it sounds very complex and maybe even a little bit manipulative.
Yeah, for sure. But this book really breaks it down in a way that's approachable and actually really fun.
Definitely. And it's not just for, like, high-stakes business deals or, poker championships.
Right, it's for everyday situations, like negotiating a raise or figuring out,
Yeah,
the best way to get your kids to do their chores.
exactly.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's give you a quick roadmap of the main themes.
Sounds good.
So first up, we have backward reasoning.
Ah, yes. This is all about starting at the end, the desired outcome, and then working backwards to figure out the best path.
So like planning a road trip, right?
Yeah. You wouldn't just start driving without knowing your destination.
Nope. Then there's the infamous prisoner's dilemma.
Oh, this one's always a classic.
Have you ever been in a situation where cooperating would have been the best outcome for everyone, but you were tempted to act in your own self-interest?
Oh, all the time. It's human nature, right?
Right. Well, the prisoner's dilemma explains why that happens and how we can sometimes get stuck in those less than ideal situations.
It's a powerful concept.
Then we'll dive into the power of commitment.
This is one of my favorites.
It's about making a credible, often irreversible commitment to a certain action, which can actually influence the behavior of others in your favor.
It's like that scene in The Princess Bride where Wesley poisons both goblets.
Oh, yeah.
No going back.
Talking about commitment, we'll also be unpacking the world of information manipulation.
Ooh, this is where things get a little sneaky.
It's about learning to read between the lines, decode signals, and understand the hidden motivations behind people's actions.
It's like being a detective.
Exactly. And finally, we'll tackle the art of bargaining and auctions.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Whether you're negotiating a salary or bidding on that vintage record player you've always wanted, we'll equip you with the strategies to come out on top.
I love it.
So are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Okay, so the book kicks off with the idea that strategic thinking is about understanding how your actions influence other people's decisions.
Yeah, it's not just about what you want. It's about anticipating how others will react to your choices.
And that's where backward reasoning comes in.
Exactly. You got to put yourself in the other person's shoes and think several steps ahead.
Just like playing chess.
Exactly. Instead of just reacting to your opponent's last move, you need to anticipate their future moves and plan accordingly.
Like if I'm playing checkers with my niece, I have to think, okay, if I move here, what's she going to do next? And then what's my best response to that? It can get pretty complex.
Yeah, especially when you're playing against a worthy opponent.
Totally. The authors illustrate this concept with a really simple game, 21 flags.
Oh, I love this game.
So two teams take turns removing 1, 2, or 3 flags at a time. Whoever removes the last flag wins.
Sounds simple enough, right?
But here's the catch.
By working backward from the winning position, you can actually figure out a foolproof strategy.
So it's all about setting yourself up for success, creating a scenario where you're in control, even if it doesn't seem like it at first.
Exactly.
This is making me rethink how I approach everything, from board games to work projects.
And that's the beauty of this book. It gives you a framework for thinking strategically about all sorts of situations.
Now, this idea of backward reasoning isn't just for games. The authors even applied it to Robert Frost's famous poem, The Road Not Taken.
Oh, yeah, the one about 2 roads diverging in a wood.
Exactly. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I loved the shore. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Such a classic.
But strategically speaking, it's a bit misleading. Well, Frost implies that he made a spontaneous, intuitive choice.
Right, like he just went with his gut.
Yeah. But in reality, strategic thinking would involve considering the potential consequences of each path
Right.
before making a decision.
Absolutely. Weighing the pros and cons like, okay, this path is shorter, but it looks pretty rocky. That one's longer, but it seems smoother.
Right. It's about being deliberate and thoughtful, not just blindly following your intuition.
And that's a key theme throughout the book, that good decisions are often the result of careful planning and analysis, not just luck or gut feeling.
Okay, so we've talked about backward reasoning. Let's dive into the prisoner's dilemma.
This one's always fascinating.
It's all about how individual rationality can sometimes lead to collective irrationality.
Right. It highlights the tension between what's best for the individual versus what's best for the group.
So the classic example is two suspects who are arrested for a crime.
Okay, I'm familiar with this one.
So they're held in separate cells, can't communicate, and are each given a choice: confess and implicate the other, or remain silent.
Right, and this is where it gets interesting.
If both stay silent, they each get a light sentence.
Mm-hmm.
If one confesses and the other stays silent, the confessor goes free. The silent one gets a heavy sentence.
Yeah.
But if both confess silent, they both get a moderate sentence.
It's a classic dilemma.
So what would you do?
Well, it seems like confessing is always the best option for the individual, no matter what the other suspect does.
Right.
Because if the other person stays silent, confessing means you go free instead of getting a light sentence. And if they confessing means you get a moderate sentence instead of a heavy one.
So it seems like a no-brainer to confess.
On the surface, yes.
But here's the catch. If both suspects confess, they both end up with a moderate sentence.
Which is worse than if they had both stayed silent.
Exactly. It's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're so focused on outsmarting the other person that you end up hurting yourself in the process.
And this happens all the time in real life, not just in hypothetical scenarios.
Oh, totally. The book gives tons of real-world examples of this.
Wow.
From price wars between businesses to environmental problems like overfishing.
Right, those are great examples.
So how do we avoid falling into these prisoner's dilemma traps?
Well, one key is repetition.
Like if you know you'll be interacting with someone repeatedly.
Yeah, exactly. If you know you'll be seeing them again, you're more likely to cooperate to avoid future punishment. It's all about building a reputation for being trustworthy.
Like those gas stations across the street from each other. They're not going to start a price war. That'll hurt both of them in the long run.
Exactly. They have to see each other every day.
It's like, hey, let's play nice so we can both stay in business.
Exactly. And communication is crucial, too.
Like if the players can actually talk to each other.
Yeah, if they can communicate and agree on a cooperative strategy, they can often avoid the pitfalls of the dilemma.
This reminds me of those team-building exercises where you have to work together to solve a puzzle or build something.
Oh, yeah, those can be fun.
Communication is key. Otherwise, you're just a bunch of individuals pulling in different directions, and nothing gets accomplished.
And that's a great segue into the next section of the book, which is a perfect example of the power of commitment. That's what we're talking about next, right?
Yeah, that's next on our roadmap. And it's one of the most intriguing concepts in the book, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. It's about understanding that by limiting your options, you can actually increase your influence.
Okay, now that sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah.
How does limiting your options make you more powerful?
Think back to Cortez burning his ships.
Oh, right.
By eliminating the possibility of retreat, he sent a powerful signal to both his troops and the Aztecs that he was all in, fully committed to conquering the land.
I see. It's like saying, I'm so sure of myself and my goals that I'm willing to burn all bridges behind me. It shows a level of confidence that could really shake things up.
Exactly. And the book breaks down different ways to make these credible commitments.
Okay, so what are some examples?
Well, contracts are one way. They create a legal obligation to follow through.
Right, makes sense.
Building a reputation for keeping your word is another powerful tool.
It's like that saying, your word is your bond.
Exactly. If people know you're reliable and trustworthy, they're more likely to take your commitments seriously.
And then there's the more dramatic approach, like actually burning bridges, making it impossible to back out.
Right, that's the extreme version.
This could involve publicly announcing a decision, making a significant investment, or even physically destroying resources that would allow you to change your mind.
It's a bold move for sure.
It's like the no takebacks rule in a game. Once you've made your move, you're committed to the consequences.
The key is to make the cost of breaking your commitment so high that it becomes irrational to do so.
Got it. So it's not just about making promises. It's about making promises that are believable and impactful.
Exactly. It's about backing up your words with actions.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's shift gears a bit and delve into the world of information manipulation.
Ooh, this is where things get really interesting.
Or maybe a little bit sneaky.
It's about recognizing that information is power and knowing how to use it strategically.
I like this already. It's like being a spy, learning to read between the lines and decode secret messages.
The book focuses on two key concepts, signaling and screening.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So signaling is about taking actions to reveal information. that you want others to know.
Okay, so it's about controlling the narrative.
In a way, yes. Like a
Mhm.
company offering a really generous warranty on their product.
Oh, I see. They're signaling that they're confident in the quality and durability of what they're selling.
Right, because if the product were actually shoddy, honoring that warranty would cost them a fortune.
So the warranty itself becomes a signal of quality.
Exactly.
It's like putting your money where your mouth is.
The book gives lots of other examples of signaling.
Like what?
Well, a job applicant might highlight their education or volunteer work on their resume.
Right, they're signaling their skills and character to potential employers.
Exactly.
It's all about presenting yourself in the best possible light, emphasizing the information that'll make you stand out.
Now, screening is the flip side of signaling. It's about setting up mechanisms to elicit information from others.
Just to figure out what they know.
Yes, or what kind of person they are.
Okay, that's interesting. So like a dating app that asks you a bunch of questions about your hobbies and interests.
Exactly. They're screening potential matches to help you find someone compatible.
Or like a car insurance company that asks about your driving history and age before giving you a quote.
Right, they're screening drivers to assess their risk level.
It's about gathering information to make informed decisions.
And both signaling and screening are essential tools in any strategic interaction.
Because we don't always have all the information we need.
Exactly. They help us navigate a world where information is often incomplete or asymmetric.
It's like playing poker.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out what cards your opponents are holding, and they're trying to do the same to you.
And just like in poker, the more skilled you are at reading those signals and screening for information, the better your chances of winning.
So it's all about being a strategic information gatherer.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm feeling like a strategic mastermind already. But let's not forget about the more practical side of things. Bargaining and auctions. This is where we put all our strategic skills to the test.
This is where the real fun begins.
The book is all about negotiating and competing effectively. Whether you're haggling for a souvenir at a flea market or bidding on $1 million painting at Sotheby's.
It runs the gamut.
I'm more of a flea market negotiator myself,
Me too.
but I'm always up for learning new tricks of the trade.
Well, the book breaks down two types of bargaining, distributive and integrative.
Okay, tell me more.
So distributive bargaining is like dividing a pie. One person's gain is the other person's loss.
Like when my sister and I used to fight over the last cookie.
Exactly. There was only one winner and one loser.
And haggling over the price of a car or a house is a classic example of distributive bargaining.
Right. Integrative bargaining, on the other hand, is about finding solutions that benefit both parties.
So it's not about winning or losing.
It's about expanding the pie, not just dividing it up.
So it's more like baking a bigger cookie together so we can both have a piece.
Precisely. Negotiating a business deal where both parties can leverage their strengths and resources to create a mutually beneficial outcome. That's a great example of integrative bargaining.
This makes me think of those win-win scenarios they always talk about in business school.
Right. It's not just about getting what you want. It's about finding a solution that works for everyone involved.
Now, the book offers a bunch of strategies for successful bargaining, regardless of whether it's distributive or integrative.
Like what?
Well, they talk about knowing your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Ah, yes, your backup plan.
It's like having a safety net, so you don't feel pressured to accept a deal. That's not in your best interest.
Exactly. It gives you leverage.
And it's also important to set a realistic aspiration level. What's the best outcome you could reasonably hope to achieve?
Right. Don't go in with pie-in-the-sky expectations.
And I bet being willing to walk away is key, too.
Absolutely. It shows you're serious and not desperate to make a deal at any cost.
It's like playing hard to get in the dating world.
Right. Sometimes a little bit of aloofness can make you more desirable.
Interesting. So we've covered bargaining. What about auctions? I always find those so nerve-wracking, with the bidding going back and forth and everyone trying to outsmart each other.
Well, the book delves into the world of auctions, too, exploring different formats and strategies for bidding effectively.
Oh, so what are some of the different formats?
Well, there's the classic English auction, where bids are openly raised until only one bidder remains.
That's the one I always picture, like those fast-talking auctioneers on TV.
Yeah.
Chanting, going once, going twice sold.
Right, exactly. Then there's the Dutch auction, where the auctioneer starts with a high price and gradually lowers it until someone bids. And, of course, there are sealed bid auctions, where bidders submit their bids privately.
It's like a game of strategy and psychology.
Absolutely.
You have to think about how much you're willing to pay, but also how much you think everyone else will bid.
And one particularly interesting auction format is the Vickrey auction.
Okay, I've never heard of that.
So in this type of auction, the highest bidder wins, but only pays the price of the second highest bid.
Wait, what? That sounds crazy. Why would anyone want to do that?
Well, it's designed to encourage bidders to bid their true value for the item, as they know they won't be penalized for overbidding.
So it takes some of the pressure off,
Exactly.
knowing you won't accidentally pay way more than you intended.
I like that. The book highlights a few key strategies for successful auction bidding.
Like what?
Well, understanding the value of the item to you is paramount. Don't get caught up in the frenzy, and bid more than it's worth to you.
Right. It's like going to a store with a budget in mind. If you overspend, you'll regret it later.
And try to anticipate the bidding behavior of other participants.
So do your research.
Exactly. Observe their body language during the auction. Maybe even hire a professional auctioneer for advice.
It's like playing chess again, thinking several moves ahead. Okay. I'm starting to see how all these concepts from the book connect and overlap. It's all about being a strategic thinker, no matter what situation you're in.
Exactly. It's about having a framework for approaching problems and decisions in a more thoughtful and deliberate way.
This has been so enlightening. I feel like I've learned so much already, but I'm curious. What else does the book cover?
Oh, there's plenty more. We've covered a lot of ground, but there are a few more gems in this book that I think you'll find fascinating.
Lay them on me. I'm ready for more.
One chapter that really surprised me was about voting.
Voting?
Yeah, you wouldn't think of it as a strategic game, but when you break it down, it totally is.
You mean like deciding who to vote for?
Exactly.
I usually just go with my gut feeling.
That's how a lot of people approach it, but the authors show how strategic thinking can play a huge role in elections.
Okay, I'm listening.
So they talk about cyclical preferences.
Cyclical preferences.
Yeah, where there's no clear majority winner because different groups of voters have different rankings of the candidates.
So it's like a three-way rock, paper, scissors situation.
Exactly.
Where no matter who wins, someone else is going to be unhappy.
Exactly. Imagine an election with three candidates, A, B, and C.
Right.
One group might prefer A over B over C. Another group might prefer B over C over A. And a third group might prefer C over A over B.
So no matter who wins, there's always going to be a group that feels like their vote didn't really count.
That's the problem.
Okay, that's kind of disheartening. So how do we fix that?
Well, the book explores different voting systems and how they try to address this problem.
Like what?
Well, there's plurality voting, where the candidate with the most votes wins, even if they don't have a majority.
Right.
And then there are systems like ranked choice voting, where you rank the candidates in order of preference.
Oh, interesting. So if your first choice doesn't win, your vote can still count towards your second or third choice.
Exactly. It gives voters more flexibility and can lead to a more representative outcome.
I like that.
The book also talks about the strategic considerations that voters face.
Like what?
Well, sometimes it might make sense to vote for your second choice candidate if you believe your first choice has no chance of winning.
So it's like playing the odds.
Exactly.
Making a strategic decision based on the likelihood of different outcomes.
They call this strategic voting, and it can have a big impact on the outcome of an election.
Wow. I never realized how complex voting could be. I'm definitely going to be thinking more strategically about my next trip to the ballot box.
I think that's a great takeaway. And finally, the book wraps up with a chapter on incentives, which ties everything together beautifully.
Okay, incentives.
Yeah, it emphasizes that incentives are the driving force behind human behavior.
So it's all about understanding what motivates people.
Exactly. If you want someone to do something, you need to provide them with an incentive that's strong enough to motivate them.
Carrots and sticks.
Haha, right. It seems obvious, but the authors highlight all these common mistakes that people make when designing incentive systems.
Like what?
Well, one mistake is setting the wrong incentives. If you reward the wrong behavior, you're going to get more of that behavior, even if it's not what you ultimately want.
It's like accidentally training your dog to do the wrong trick because you're giving them treats at the wrong time.
Perfect analogy. And another mistake is failing to consider unintended consequences. Incentives can have ripple effects, so you really need to think things through before implementing a new system.
It's not just about creating incentives. It's about creating the right incentives.
Right.
And anticipating how they'll play out in the real world.
Exactly. The authors give examples of how incentives are used in education, healthcare, even criminal justice.
Oh, wow.
It's about understanding how to motivate people to act in a way that benefits themselves and society as a whole.
This whole conversation has been such a mind-opener. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for approaching problems and making decisions.
Me too. I always learn something new every time I revisit this book.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the art of strategy, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important message is that strategic thinking is not about manipulating people or being ruthless. It's about using your understanding of human behavior to make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and create a more just and equitable world.
Beautifully said. It's about using these tools for good, not for evil.
Exactly. So to our listeners out there, if you're ready to level up your decision-making skills and see the world through a strategic lens, I highly recommend picking up a copy of The Art of Strategy. It's a book that will challenge your assumptions, expand your perspective, and empower you to make smarter, more strategic choices in all areas of your life.
And who knows, it might even help you win a game or two along the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the art of strategy.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope you'll join us again soon for another episode of Books and Bytes.